Your weakness has become your identity. And you defend it like it's worthy of protection. When someone challenges you to be more, do more, become more, you respond with reasons why you can't instead of ways that you could. That weak version of yourself has convinced you that limitations are permanent. That past failures predict future outcomes. That your circumstances define your potential. It's trained you to seek safety instead of growth, comfort instead of challenge, certainty instead of possibility. And this training has created a life far smaller than the one you're capable of living. You were born with greatness inside you. But there's something standing between you and that greatness, a weaker version of yourself that you've allowed to exist for too long. Today is your day to make a decision. Today is your day to kill that weak version of yourself. I want to talk to you about something serious. Something that's stopping you right now. Something that's been holding you back your entire life. The greatest enemy you will ever face is not outside of you, it's within you. It's that weak version of yourself that makes excuses. That settles for less. That's afraid to take risks. That doubts your abilities. That questions your worth. That weak version must die today if you want to live in your full potential tomorrow. Every person on this planet was born with a purpose, a destiny, something they were meant to do. You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not here by chance. You are here on purpose, with a purpose. But that weak version of yourself has convinced you that you're ordinary, so that you're just like everybody else, that there's nothing special about you. That weak version is a liar. And it's time to silence it forever. Many of us have lived with this weaker self for so long that we've become comfortable with it. We've accepted its limitations. We've embraced its excuses. We've welcomed its fears. And in doing so, we've rejected our true selves, the powerful, capable, extraordinary selves we were created to be. Look at your life right now. Are you living at your highest potential? Are you using all your gifts? Are you maximizing every opportunity? Or are you holding back? Are you playing small? Are you living in fear? If you're honest with yourself, you know the answer. The weak version of yourself has built an invisible prison around your mind. You can't see the bars, but you feel them every time you try to step outside your comfort zone. You feel them every time you have a big idea but talk yourself out of pursuing it. You feel them every time you want to speak up but decide to stay silent. You feel them every time you dream big but settle for less. This prison wasn't built overnight. It was constructed slowly. One negative thought at a time. One defeated moment at a time. One surrender at a time. And now it feels permanent. It feels like it's just who you are. But I'm here to tell you that prison is not permanent. And that weak self is not who you really are. Let me tell you a personal story. When I was younger, I too had a weak version of myself that I had to kill. Growing up, I was often told what I couldn't do. I was told about my limitations. I was reminded of my place in society. And for a while, I believed those voices. I accepted those limitations. I embraced that weaker version of myself. I remember sitting in my small room, looking out the window and feeling this burning desire to make an impact on the world. But then that weak voice would whisper, "Who do you think you are? You don't have what it takes. You don't have the right background. You don't have the right connections. You don't have the right education." And for years, I listened to that voice. I allowed it to define me. I permitted it to limit me. I gave it authority over my destiny. But then something happened. I began to question that voice. I began to challenge that weaker self. I began to wonder, what if that voice is wrong? What if I am capable of more? What if my limitations aren't real but just perceived? The day I decided to kill that weak version of myself was the day my life began to change. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but it was necessary. I had to recognize that the weak version of myself was not protecting me. It was preventing me from becoming who I was meant to be. And today, I stand before you as living proof that when you kill that weak version of yourself, you make room for the stronger, truer version to emerge. So let's talk about the anatomy of weakness and where it comes from. Weakness doesn't appear out of nowhere. It has origins, it has roots. And understanding these roots is essential if you want to pull them out completely. The first root of weakness is fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, fear of success, fear of not being good enough. Fear is like a paralytic drug that numbs your potential and keeps you stationary when you should be moving forward. The second root is past experiences. Perhaps you tried something once and failed. Perhaps someone criticized you harshly. Perhaps you made a mistake that had serious consequences. And now, that past experience has become a reference point for what's possible in your future. The third root is the environment you're in, the people around you, the culture you're part of, the information you consume. All these things shape your perception of yourself and what's possible for your life. The fourth root is ignorance. Sometimes we don't know what we're capable of simply because we haven't been exposed to the right information, to the right mentors, the right examples. And the fifth root is comfort. Human beings naturally gravitate toward comfort. We prefer the known over the unknown, the familiar over the unfamiliar, the safe over the risky. But growth never happens in the zone of comfort. Strength is never developed in ease. Understanding these roots helps us see that our weakness isn't just a personality trait or a fixed characteristic. It's a condition that developed over time and can be changed over time. But what's the price of tolerating your weak self? What does it cost you to allow that weaker version to continue living? First, it costs you your potential. Every day you live with that weaker self is a day you're not living up to what you could be. It's a day your gifts aren't fully expressed. It's a day your impact isn't as great as it could be. Second, it costs you your purpose. You were put on this earth to do something specific. Something only you can do in your unique way. But that weaker self prevents you from fulfilling that purpose. Third, it costs you your peace. There's nothing more disturbing than knowing deep down that you're capable of more but choosing to settle for less. That internal conflict creates a constant state of dissatisfaction. Fourth, it costs you your relationships. The weak version of yourself doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. It limits how you show up as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend, as a leader. And fifth, it costs you your legacy. What will you leave behind when your time on earth is done? What impact will you have made? What problems will you have solved? What lives will you have changed? The weak version of yourself leaves behind a legacy far smaller than what's possible for you. The price is too high. The cost is too great. You cannot afford to keep living with that weaker self one more day. Let me share another story with you. There's an old tale about an eagle who thought he was a chicken. A farmer found an eagle's egg and placed it in a chicken's nest. When the egg hatched, the young eagle grew up with the chickens. He scratched in the dirt for seeds. He clucked and cackled. He never flew more than a few feet off the ground. After all, that's what chickens do. Years passed, and the eagle grew old. One day, he saw a magnificent bird soaring high above the farm. "What is that?" he asked a nearby chicken. "That's an eagle," the chicken replied. "He's the king of the birds, but don't give it any thought. You could never be like him." The eagle never gave it another thought. He lived and died a chicken because that's what he thought he was. This story breaks my heart every time I tell it because I see too many eagles living like chickens. I see too many extraordinary people living ordinary lives. I see too many gifted individuals settling for mediocrity. I see too many born leaders choosing to follow the crowd. And all because they've accepted a weaker version of themselves as their true identity. You are not a chicken. You are an eagle. You were born to soar. You were created to rise above. You were designed to stand out, not blend in. That weak version of yourself wants you to believe you're a chicken. It wants you to keep scratching in the dirt when you could be soaring above the clouds. It wants you to keep clucking when you could be screeching your unique call. It wants you to keep looking down when you were made to look up. You've lived like this long enough. You've accepted these limitations long enough. You've embraced this false identity long enough. Today is the day to remember who you really are. Today is the day to reclaim your true identity. Today is the day to kill that weak version of yourself and allow the stronger, truer version to emerge. The weak you keeps you in the comfort zone, but growth happens outside of comfort. The weak you avoids risks, but rewards come to those who take calculated risks. The weak you seeks the easy path, but strength is built on the difficult path. The weak you wants immediate gratification, but lasting success requires delayed gratification. The weak you makes excuses, but excellence makes no room for excuses. The weak you blames others, but responsibility is the first step toward change. You'll kill that weak version today. It's not serving you. It's not protecting you. It's not helping you. It's hindering you. It's limiting you. It's crippling you. I'm not suggesting this will be easy. Killing that weak version of yourself is perhaps the hardest thing you'll ever do. It requires honesty. It demands courage. It necessitates discomfort. It calls for consistency. But the rewards of doing so are beyond calculation. When you kill that weak version, you make room for a strength you didn't know you had. You create space for abilities that have been dormant. You open doors to opportunities that were previously invisible. There comes a moment in everyone's life when they must decide who they truly are. Not who others say they are. Not who their past suggests they are. Not who their fears tell them they are. But who they truly are at their core, beyond the limitations, beyond the doubts, beyond the failures of yesterday. That moment of decision is right now for you. This very second, the weak version of yourself is comfortable, familiar. It doesn't demand much from you. It allows you to blend in with the crowd, to avoid criticism, to escape the responsibility that comes with greatness. But that weak version is killing your future slowly. It's suffocating your potential day by day. The strong version of yourself, the real you, is waiting to be acknowledged, to be embraced, to be lived. This version doesn't need the approval of others. This version doesn't shrink in the face of challenges. This version doesn't settle for mediocrity when excellence is possible. The choice between these two selves is yours alone to make. No one can make it for you. No one can force you to rise above your current limitations. No one can push you into your greatness. You must choose it. You must claim it. You must live it. Let me give you practical steps to kill that weak version of yourself. These aren't mere suggestions. They're essential requirements for transformation. First, identify the weak version's voice. We all have an internal dialogue, a constant conversation happening within our minds. The weak version of yourself has a particular tone, specific phrases, familiar excuses it uses regularly. I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I don't have what it takes. What if I fail? What will others think? Learn to recognize this voice. Become intimately familiar with how it sounds, when it appears, what triggers it. The second, challenge every limitation. The weak version thrives on unchallenged limitations. It tells you what you can't do, where you can't go, who you can't become, and expects you to accept these pronouncements without question. From now on, question everything. When that voice says, you can't start a business, ask, why not? When it says, you'll never be in shape, ask, says who? When it says, you don't have the talent, Ask, how do I know until I've given my absolute best effort? Third, create a new internal narrative. Once you've identified the weak voice and challenged its limitations, you need to replace its negative messages with powerful truths. This isn't about positive thinking or empty affirmations. This is about crafting a realistic yet empowering narrative about who you are and what you're capable of. I am persistent. I learn from every experience. I grow stronger through challenges. I am committed to excellence. My potential is greater than my past. Fourth, surround yourself with strength. The people around you will either reinforce your weak version or encourage your strong version. Choose carefully who you spend time with. Seek out individuals who are already living at their highest potential, who refuse to settle, who push through limitations. Their strength will inspire your strength. Their courage will fuel your courage. Their success will illuminate what's possible for you. Fifth, act despite fear. The weak version uses fear as its primary weapon. It magnifies potential risks, exaggerates possible failures, and minimizes your ability to handle challenges. The antidote is action, not reckless action, but calculated. Courageous action. Feel the fear and move forward anyway. Each time you act despite fear, you weaken the grip of that weaker self. Sixth, build daily disciplines. The weak version loves inconsistency. It thrives in environments of sporadic effort and half-hearted commitments. Combat this by establishing non-negotiable daily disciplines, specific actions you commit to taking every single day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of external circumstances. These disciplines become the foundation of your strength. Finally, celebrate strength, not comfort. We have a natural tendency to celebrate when things are easy, when we're comfortable, when life is flowing smoothly. But true growth happens in discomfort, in challenge, in pushing beyond what's easy. Begin to celebrate the moments when you choose the harder path, when you persist despite difficulty, when you face what you've been avoiding. These moments of strength deserve recognition. Let me tell you about someone I mentored years ago. I'll call him Thomas. When Thomas first came to me, he was living as the weak version of himself. He had dreams, big ones, but he had convinced himself they were impossible. He had talents, but had buried them under layers of self-doubt. He had opportunities, but was too afraid to seize them. Thomas grew up in difficult circumstances. His father abandoned the family when Thomas was young. His mother worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table. The neighborhood was tough, and expectations were low. The narrative around him was clear: people like us don't succeed. People like us just survive. And Thomas had accepted this narrative as truth. He graduated high school but didn't believe college was for people like him. He got a job, a decent one, but never pursued the career he truly wanted because that was for other people. He had ideas for businesses but never took action because who was he to think he could be an entrepreneur? The weak version of Thomas was in complete control of his life. It determined his choices. It limited his vision. It constrained his actions. Our work together began with a simple but profound realization. The narrative Thomas had accepted wasn't the only available story. It wasn't even his true story. It was a story given to him by circumstances, by limited perspectives, by people who themselves were living as weaker versions. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Thomas had invested years in that weaker self. He had built habits that reinforced it. He had created relationships that expected it. He had made decisions that reflected it. But day by day, choice by choice, action by action, Thomas began to kill that weaker version. He enrolled in night classes at a local college, not because he suddenly believed it would be easy, but because he decided to challenge the limitation that education wasn't for people like him. He started speaking up at work, offering ideas, taking on additional responsibilities, not because the fear of judgment disappeared, but because he chose to act despite that fear. He began researching what it would take to start the business he'd always dreamed of. Not because all doubts vanished, but because he refused to let doubt have the final word in his life. The most beautiful part of Thomas's transformation wasn't the external changes, as impressive as they were. It was the internal shift, the way he carried himself, the confidence in his voice, the clarity in his eyes. He was becoming who he was always meant to be, who he truly was beneath the layers of limitation and fear. Today, Thomas runs a successful business that employs dozens of people from his old neighborhood. He didn't just change his own life, he's changing the narrative for an entire community. All because he made the decision to kill that weak version of himself. Your purpose demands strength. Let me say that again. Your purpose demands strength. You were not placed on this earth with your unique combination of gifts, passions, experiences, and opportunities to live a small life. You were not given your specific talents to hide them. You were not placed in your particular sphere of influence to blend in. Your purpose, the very reason you exist, requires you to be strong. Not arrogant, not domineering, but strong, confident in who you are, clear about what you bring to the table, committed to making your unique contribution. The weak version of yourself cannot fulfill your purpose. It's too afraid, too hesitant, too concerned with safety and comfort, too worried about what others might think, too attached to the known, even when the known is far smaller than what's possible. Your purpose will take you into unknown territory. It will demand skills you haven't yet developed. It will require courage you haven't yet demonstrated. It will call for perseverance beyond what has previously been necessary. Your purpose will stretch you, challenge you, push you beyond your current limitations. This is why the weak version must die. It simply cannot take you where you're meant to go. It cannot help you become who you're meant to be. It cannot support you in doing what you're meant to do. Consider the greatest contributors throughout history in business, in arts, in science, in humanitarian efforts, in any field of significant impact. Were they living as weaker versions of themselves? Were they playing small? Were they hiding their gifts? Were they avoiding risks? Were they prioritizing comfort over contribution? No, they had killed the weak version and embraced the stronger, truer version of who they were. They weren't perfect. They had flaws, made mistakes, faced failures. But they refused to be defined by limitations that didn't serve their purpose. You have a choice to make today, not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when the circumstances are perfect. Today, will you continue to tolerate that weak version of yourself? Will you keep making excuses for its presence in your life? Will you allow it to determine your future as it has influenced your past? Or will you make the decision that enough is enough? That you're tired of living beneath your potential? That you're ready to embrace the discomfort that comes with growth? That you're willing to face the fears that have held you back? Taking action requires more than motivation. Motivation is emotional, and emotions fluctuate. One day you feel ready to conquer the world, and the next day you can barely get out of bed. If you rely solely on motivation, you'll be at the mercy of these emotional waves. What you need is commitment. Commitment continues when motivation fades. All commitment persists when feelings change. Commitment keeps you moving forward when the initial excitement of a new decision has worn off. Start by identifying one area where the weak version of yourself has maintained control. Perhaps it's in your health, where you've convinced yourself you don't have time to exercise or prepare nutritious meals. Perhaps it's in your relationships, where you've accepted patterns of communication that don't serve anyone well. Perhaps it's in your career, where you've settled for a position that doesn't utilize your full capabilities. Choose one area, just one, and commit to a specific action that directly challenges the weak version's control. Make this action concrete, measurable, rather than time-bound. Not, I'll be more assertive at work. But I will speak up in the next team meeting with at least one idea. Not I'll get in shape, but I will walk for 30 minutes every morning this week. This single action becomes your first victory in the battle against that weaker self. It becomes evidence that change is possible, that you can choose differently, that the weak version's control is not absolute. Build on this victory with another action, then another, then another. Create momentum. Establish a pattern of choices that align with the stronger version of yourself. Expect resistance. The weak version won't surrender control easily. It will fight back with doubts, with fears, with rationalizations for returning to old patterns. Recognize this resistance for what it is, the death throes of a version of yourself that no longer serves your highest good. When I look at you, I don't see the weak version you've been living with. I see potential waiting to be expressed. I see gifts waiting to be developed. I see impact waiting to be made. I see the person you were created to be strong, capable, purposeful, effective. The world needs that person, not the diminished version that plays small and stays safe. Not the hesitant version that holds back and hides. Not the fearful version that avoids risks and dodges challenges. The world needs the full expression of who you truly are. The complete manifestation of your unique combination of talents, passions, experiences, and perspectives. The total impact that only you can make in your specific sphere of influence. You owe it to yourself to kill that weak version. You owe it to those who have invested in you. You owe it to those who will benefit from your strength. You owe it to the purpose for which you were created. Rise up, step forward, speak out, take action. Face fear. Embrace discomfort. Challenge limitations. Reject excuses. Defy low expectations. Exceed self-imposed boundaries. The weak version has had its time. It has influenced enough of your choices. It has limited enough of your opportunities. It has diminished enough of your impact. Today marks the end of its control. Today signals the beginning of a new chapter. Today represents the turning point between who you've been and who you're becoming. You'll kill that weak version of yourself. Not because you hate who you've been, but because you love who you're becoming. Not because your past has no value, but because your future has immeasurable worth. Not because you're rejecting yourself, but because you're embracing your true self. The stronger, truer version of you is waiting. It has always been there, beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, beneath the limitations you've accepted. It has been waiting for this moment, the moment when you decide that living at anything less than your full potential is no longer acceptable. That moment is now. That decision is yours to make. That transformation is yours to experience. You'll kill that weak version of yourself and watch as the life you were meant to live begins to unfold before you.